Welcome back to the Daily Dope. This is Brando over here with an update on this Michigan situation. What Michigan situation, you may ask? Well, apparently, and I wasn't really taking this story too seriously, but apparently the whole thing where, and I've made a couple clips about this, or mentioned it, at least in the other clip, but basically Lansing was talking about, once the legalizing recreational marijuana, like alcohol thing, got approved to be on the ballot, then the legislature had this little deadline of June 5th, I believe it is, to go ahead and vote it in, at which time they could alter it. And quite frankly, they have some really sinister plans for the alteration of this proposal if they get a hold of it. So I didn't screen this video already. Whoops, I didn't even know I had a video. So actually, I didn't know I had this article, so this is kind of a new article that I just seen pop up. But let's go ahead and check this video out for a second and see what they got.
A pro-pot coalition wants Michigan voters to decide this issue in November. However, for the first time, the Senate Republican leader reports that he has the votes to legalize pot without a vote of the people.
I have the ability in the Senate to pass a citizen-initiated petition to adopt it and amend it.
Senator Meekhoff wants to amend that proposal to place more controls on the production, distribution, and sale of pot. But are there 55 House votes to do that, Mr. Speaker of the House?
We are well short of support there. I don't anticipate this happening. The voters are likely going to have to decide this.
What are the chances?
I think better than most people think.
Democratic candidate for Governor Gretchen Whitmer wants this issue on the ballot, hoping that young people will vote yes on pot and then hang around to vote for her.
If that's on the ballot, I think it does inspire some people to come out to vote. But, that's not my primary concern. It is about ensuring that the will of the people is respected.
A leader of the pro-pot effort believes that Senator Meekhoff is pushing this vote allegedly on behalf of some big business interests who want to monopolize the pot business. This House Democratic leader can't confirm that, but he does say this.
Part of the reason why this is being pushed, so maybe well-connected donors perhaps are having conversations and trying to move this forward instead of letting the voters make a decision, and that's the best policy for the state.
That is not true.
Is it
Bullshit.
any part of it
Bullshit.
true?
Not any part of the truth.
Oh, come on. Look at this liar. That is the absolute truth. And we know who the lobby groups already are that were weighing in on the medical marijuana license, the Facilities Licensing Act, to impose the financial, basically, like, if you wanted to run a medical marijuana business with a license in Michigan, you basically have to have a certain amount of assets in order to pass the application process. Like, you have to, and it could run up into the millions of dollars. Well, $1 million, but still, depending on how many licenses you get. And these people also push to have the ability to stack licenses. And we know who these people are. We got the Muchmore Group was one that was at this meeting with the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board and the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs people. So we know what's going on, dude. You can't lie about this. We know what's going on. We know what you guys are trying to do in the background. And quite frankly, the House, you're not going to get the votes in the House. So I think this guy is just, not only is he saying everything he's saying so far to show the donors that he's not backing down, but this here is just obvious. We'll watch that again.
Well, are there big shooters?
And that's the best policy for the state.
That is not true.
Is it any part of it true?
Not any part of the truth.
Well, are there big shooters with some money that want to get in this business that have talked to you?
They have not. This is public policy that is really bad for Michigan.
Look for this legalized pot issue to come to a
and that's another thing is is he keeps saying that this policy is bad, and it's like this, you know, the proposal is like the wild, wild west, and the regulations are horrible, and it's like unregulated. It'll be, and none of that could be any further from the truth. It could be on Pluto, and it's not a planet, man, because this has been the same thing you see everywhere where they try to legalize medical or regular marijuana with a ballot initiative. And I just did a story about Utah, how they were saying the same thing about that. They're basically saying, oh, this is just basically recreational marijuana. And then with this, and if you look at the regulations package, and I've made a couple videos about it, and I've interviewed somebody from the campaign 2 times, and to be honest, it's a highly regulated system. Very highly regulated. It's almost as regulated as the medical marijuana that the state legislature in Lansing wrote and passed into law in 2016. It's pretty close. But for these guys to go out there and say that this is the wild, wild west, or these regulations aren't tight enough, it's not the case. They just want to make it a little bit different so that, like, that there won't be any small players, period. That's what they want to do with this. That's what they want to do with the medical marijuana licenses, which they've already basically done, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Head early next week. Reporting from Mackinac Island, Tim Skubic, Fox 2
News. Good video. And why are they in Mackinac Island? I think that's where they had this symposium, and John Boehner was there speaking about marijuana, and he couldn't convince some of these Republican caucuses in the House to come aboard. All right, so I don't see this Meekoff. He's full of shit. That's all I got to say about that. Let's look at this other article about it. So, from being adamantly opposed to cannabis to becoming an advisor to one of the country's leading marijuana companies, former U.S. Speaker of the House John Boehner weighed in on legal weed Thursday during a Mackinac policy conference. Quote, "I've found myself in the last 10 years looking at issues differently than I used to, especially in the last 4 to 5 years. I wonder why. It's probably because the donors aren't pumping money into your, offshore accounts and shit to make you think a certain way. And now you just let yourself guide yourself right into the corporate marijuana takeover. So since the number of people I know using cannabis in some form to relieve some medical issues has grown," he said, "so I got into looking into medical benefits of cannabis, and it's really pretty incredible." Now, see, I have a double I have a lot of emotions when I hear John Boehner say these things. But whenever I hear anybody say these things, I have to believe that it's true, because that's the power of medical marijuana. It will wake anybody up once you see it actually in work, or whatever medical marijuana you are trying to criticize, and then you see it actually work for whatever ailment that it's working for. It's pretty miraculous. It'll wake you up, but I don't know. I also think that this guy wakes up when he smells money. I mean, that's pretty much what motivates a guy like John Boehner. I mean, that orange tan is not cheap, dude. Quote, "And for those who want to use it recreational, while I'll never use the product nor intend to, I don't care if somebody wants to smoke a joint. Fine, let them go do it," added Boehner, who had joined the board of Acreage Holdings, a New York-based company that has marijuana growing, processing, and retail facilities in 11 states. The very definition of the corporate takeover. And by the way, this guy is a well-known alcoholic. I mean, you hardly ever see him. He don't look like he's half wasted already. I mean, he's always got a drink in his hand. He's like that Julian guy. Much of the country has joined Boehner's transformation, including 29 states that have legalized medical marijuana, and 9 of those states also approving cannabis for adult recreational use. Michigan may be the next to fully legalize marijuana if voters approve a ballot proposal on the issue during the November 6th general election. Man, what do I got to say about recreational marijuana? To me, it's like I said, it's like the people that think that's what they're doing really don't realize that they're just using medicine, and it's all medicinal, and it's like high concentrations of good stuff that you're putting in your body. I don't see any harm. But you know, we got to fight all these battles, and we're getting people like John Boehner to say shit like that, which I know the guy really wasn't that bad of a guy when he was the Speaker of the House for all those years and they were doing all that horrible shit. But at the same time, he was just a puppet then too, and now he's just a puppet for this. What pulls his strings? Fucking money. That's it. You know? I mean, the will of the people doesn't really matter to somebody who had donors like throwing money at him for every other cause that there was. He had Big Tobacco, and Big Tobacco was probably one of his biggest supporters. Anyway, so the likelihood that the issue will end up on the ballot become much higher this week as legislator is waffling on whether to take up the issue or send it to the ballot. While Senator Majority Leader Arlen Meekoff, Republican for West Olive, said he has enough votes with the Republican caucus to amend and pass the proposal, Speaker of the House Tom Leonard, Republican from DeWitt Township, said the votes aren't there yet in the House. Folks have talked about the building momentum for this, and I would compare that to the person who has bought 5 lottery tickets versus 1 lottery ticket, Leonard said. That's a funny one. There is simply not the support there now, so I do not anticipate this happening. This is something that the voters are going to have to decide. And I mean, this guy knows the caucus, dude. I mean, come on. He knows that the caucus is divided, and he knows that there's some people who whatever the case may be with their individual races and whether they are feeling threatened by the potential blue wave or whatever, like maybe they do get reelected, but now they have this thing on their record that they tried to legalize marijuana, so it's possible that they get primaried next time, if there is a next time for some of them. So it's a dicey proposition to get a deeply conservative Christian from the Bible Belt of Michigan over there on the southwest corner of Michigan. It'd be hard to imagine one of these representatives voting for marijuana. When you do that, that's when Orwell is definitely all the way got his shit right. Like all his, books came true. When you get a Republican like that voting in a legislative session, yes, to legalizing marijuana, then I'll be convinced, man, that Orwell was completely correct on everything. All right, so nearly all the Democrats in the legislature stand in opposition to the legislator taking up the measure because they fear Republicans will change it so drastically that it will no longer resemble anything near the intent of the original proposal. No shit. And when you say nearly all the Democrats, could you please... Who is this? Who's writing this? Just nobody wants to put their name on this? Kathleen Gray. I'm not a big fan of Kathleen Gray's writing when it comes to cannabis, but let me just ask you a question. Who are these Democrats that are standing there opposing or not opposing this? Who's the Democrats that are like, okay, yeah, let's do this? Because this is some sinister, like, smoky backroom shit that they're talking about doing. We just had 2 campaigns in a row because, quite frankly, Michigan fucked us over on the first round that we did in 2016. My Legalize was the name of the campaign. We went out there and hit the pavement. We got fucking way more than enough signatures. But, guess what? We didn't get them in time. They imposed this crazy 6-month rule on the campaign, which has never been used on this sort of campaign because it was only previously used in constitutional amendments. This, just strengthened the resolve. The campaign regrouped, and then they got together with all the other campaigns in Michigan except one that wants to legalize marijuana. And they hammered it out, and they got it done in 6 months, and they got more than enough signatures, and they paid to get signatures. This was a huge campaign that cost over $1 million, I'm certain by now. I mean, just this year I'm talking about, not both years combined. And there was a volunteer army that helped out, and it was a monumental effort. And the will of the people is there with this effort, because 63 is the number of percentage, the highest percentage I've seen in the polls. The lowest is 54% for yes for this particular proposal. So that's what Michigan feels like. Michigan's ready to do this, and they're ready to do the one that they signed the petition for, or like I said, this particular proposal polls between 54 and 61, I think is the numbers. I think I said 64 earlier, but I think it's 54 is the lowest I've seen for this proposal, and 61 is the highest for this proposal. When asked if in Michigan if you want to legalize recreational or not, I think the last time I seen that one it was 63. But whatever, this is going to pass. There's no doubt about it. But if they do this shit, there's going to be a backlash. There's no doubt about that. And one of the reasons they want to do this is because they think that when everybody goes to vote for this cannabis, proposal, this recreational marijuana or regulate marijuana like alcohol, whatever you want to call it, when people go to vote for that shit, they're going to, increase the amount of people that aren't voting for Republicans. That's their theory. My theory is even Republican voters are going to vote yes for this. But yeah, you are going to get a lot of people that are going to go to the polls that aren't really Republican voters, that are going to vote yes for this and no for anybody that's running for governor for Republican. And will there be a blue wave in the legislature? We don't know. But one way they can squash that a little bit is if they pass this shit in the legislature so that supposed weed wave of people to come and vote for it won't come. All right, so that's their actual, that's just like all the motives that they have for doing this is just all the wrong shit that doesn't jive with democracy or the will of the people or any of that shit. And it's just total horse shit. And why would you do it? There's absolutely no reason that you would do this shit unless the donors were bending you over a fucking barrel. So don't give me your bullshit, Meeks. So, and I'm just the guy, Meekoff. I'm just the guy that sit here and take my chances talking about this shit. You guys can come in here and squish me like a bug anytime you want, but I mean, somebody's got to say this. This is fucking wrong. What you guys are trying to do is totally absurd. Is it legal? Sure, it's legal. That's because Michigan is the most corrupt government in the country by all measurements. And when you say that the government can just go ahead and fucking vote in the people's amendment or the people's proposal that they wanted to put on the ballot and then alter it, and basically, what do they want to do to alter it? They want to make it so nobody can get involved with it except for the people they want to get involved with it. Pretty much. There's even something even more ridiculous that they want to do to it. Stay tuned. Here we go. Their resistance was only strengthened last week when Senator Mike Shirkley, Republican from Clark Lake, who is in line to become Senate Majority Leader next year if he wins re-election and the Republicans maintain a majority in the chamber. Good luck with all that. Said his preference would be to amend the proposal so that marijuana wouldn't become legal until the federal government changes its stance and transitions marijuana from illegal to legal drug. Can they do that? I think they can, because it wouldn't be that hard of a change. They just cross out when it says that licenses can be doled out. I think right now it's 1 year from when it gets the voter approved. So 2019 November. This guy saying that what we can do is that we can just say, cross that out and say, oh yeah, this can't be done until the federal government removes cannabis from Schedule 1 or whatever, however you want to word it. So that's pretty freaking sinister. Come on, guys. This is crazy shit we're talking about here. What I would do is make it, and all you people that act like this regulate marijuana like alcohol is like a crazy government takeover, I don't know, like what you're seeing in Canada or whatever. I don't think it's that, and it's not the big corporate takeover either. At least that's not the spirit of it right now. There is some stipulations that would let licenses be doled out a little bit differently if for some reason after, I think it's 2 years of licensing, there's some problems with supply and demand, or maybe it's just 1 year, I'm not sure. But overall, this proposal is set up to license a lot of small businesses as opposed to these big giant corporate type businesses. And I don't see why there isn't room for both. You know, like, and maybe limit the big ones. I don't know. That's my theory. But you'd probably call me a communist, even though what their regulations the state wants to do, and they're mostly Republicans, look way more like the communism that they made us fear when we were kids. You know, like how the state runs everything and they pick the winners and, you know, all that good stuff. All right, so quote, what I would do is make it mirror what we've done for medical marijuana in very rigorous regulatory setting, he said during WKAR TV public television show Off the Record. I would go further and put enactment delays in it so it wouldn't be enacted until the federal government decriminalizes it. Unbelievable. Meekhoff has said the language would be included in any amended proposal, but Senate Minority Leader Jim Ananich, a Democrat from Flint, isn't so sure. Quote, Senator Shirkey says his scheme is to adopt and repeal it, and it looks like his plot is coming to fruition, he said. And the House Minority Leader Sam Singh, Democrat from East Lansing, said voters, not the lawmakers, are the ones who should decide the marijuana legalization issue. Quote, it was very clear that the Republican goal is to gut the initiative, he said. Quote, I'd rather have this go to a vote of the people and have them make the final decision rather than have Republicans play games with what is a legitimate petition. The legislature has until Tuesday afternoon to act on the ballot proposal, and it has 3 options. Come up with a competing proposal and both would go to the ballot, pass it and then amend it, or do nothing and it heads to the ballot. I guarantee you they're not going to do the first one, because another one of the groups that are backing this effort, believe me, don't believe Meekhoff, believe me, is this old group, and I'm not sure if they're still holding the same title, but they're called Michigan Responsibility Council, or the Council on Responsibility, or some crap. Michigan Responsibility Council tried to float a ballot initiative in 2016, but it was a takeover that was going to give the whole thing to 10 corporations. So we know that they're behind some of these efforts, Meekhoff. Don't even try to tell us that that's not the case. Okay? Okay. Meekhoff said he still has hopes that the Senate and House can come up with a plan to amend and adopt, even though he hates the thought of Republicans being tagged as the party that legalized marijuana in Michigan. And that would be the most ironic thing of everything, is just to say that. But it's not going to happen, because irony is not how the government really works. Now is it? All right? It doesn't. I mean, the donors have to really have you guys at the end of a gun barrel for you guys to get the damn caucus together on legalizing marijuana. All right? I don't think that's going to happen. If the House can't come up with the votes, quote, it would be colossal failure of leadership, he said. Psh. Now you're just kind of punching down to your little boy down in the House. Don't forget you got Democrats that probably don't want this shit to pass either in the House. You need 55 Republicans in the House. Also part of the calculation for Republicans is the impact the ballot proposal on marijuana would have on voter turnout, like I said earlier. The issue is expected to increase voter turnout, which traditionally helped the Democrats, and if a predicted blue wave year happens, the GOP could lose its majority status, at least in the state House, and some of the statewide offices. Senate Republicans want to take up the ballot proposal so they can amend and pass the proposal with only a simple majority, Meekoff said. If they try to amend the proposal after it passes a statewide vote, it would take a 3/4 supermajority. Quote, it's very important for our communities to know that alcohol is regulated, tobacco is regulated, and if this goes to the ballot and passes, it's basically unregulated marijuana in the market, and I think that's dangerous for our communities, Meekoff said. This is really bad public policy. It puts local control at risk, and that's unfortunate. And I don't have any idea what he's talking about there, because just like their own proposal, local municipalities can opt out of having licensed, regulated marijuana facilities in their town. But yeah, I'm not going to get into his comment because all of it's bullshit. This is not unregulated marijuana. If you don't believe me, go back and watch my videos about the regulations. They're pretty hefty. There's nothing in them that looks like unregulated marijuana to me. Are you fucking kidding? So they don't like the decriminalization part of it either. They hate that. Like the decriminalization in regulate marijuana like alcohol, to me, and I know there's some detractors out there of, you know, this proposal who are for full removal of prohibition, and I'm all for that, always. You know me, I'm totally against prohibition. However, I see the decriminalization in this proposal as being a big deal, and that would be another thing that if the legislator got a hold of this shit, they would cross all those things that say citations and misdemeanors right off, and they would increase the fines, and they would make the penalties felonies and misdemeanors. You know they will, because they are owned by the police lobby and the sheriff's associations and all that shit. The ballot proposal has the State Department of Licensing and Regulatory, or LORA, the Department of Licensing and Regulation, govern and license the recreational market, while the medical marijuana industry is controlled by a licensing board appointed by the governor and the leaders in the House of Representatives and Senate. And under the ballot proposal, communities would have to vote to opt out of allowing recreational marijuana businesses in their community, while under the medical marijuana law, communities have to vote to opt in to let those businesses in their towns. And believe me, it's not that big of a difference. I've been paying a lot of attention to those little, you know, town hall meetings and township hall and city hall, you know, all across Michigan for the last year. They've been debating on whether or not to have these licensed facilities in the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act that the state passed in 2016. And the ones, you know, they didn't want to opt in like they didn't in my town. And it wasn't because there was a lack of enthusiasm on the side of people that, you know, wanted it to opt in to this, to their communities. It was more or less because there was just opposition everywhere. All the opposition was there. You had church groups sending opposition to these town hall meetings. You had prohibition groups and police groups there to oppose this shit. Prison guards were over there opposing shit in some of these town hall meetings. So I know what's going on. People are, the prohibitionists in Michigan, there's a lot of them. They're everywhere. They're in every town. And whenever there's a meeting about marijuana facilities, they're the ones that definitely go. You know, some of the advocates might not be able to go to all of them or whatever. Whatever the case is, even if they do go, they're outnumbered, and, you know, it's just ridiculous. They get talked down. They don't have the talking points together or whatever. So whether you have a meeting at your town hall to opt in or to opt out, they're going to happen, and it's going to be the same result whether you are telling them, hey, this is going to automatically be here unless you opt out. Oh, really? Let's get together and talk about it. And guess what? Who's going to come to the fucking meeting? The people that want it to opt out the most. That's who's going to be there. So whatever, man. This already played out with medical marijuana, and we'll see the same exact thing happen when it happens for opting out. The ongoing debate came on a day when Michigan Medical Marijuana Licensing Board met to consider 19 applications for businesses that want to get into the market that is estimated to produce $700 million in sales this year alone. Of the 19, 12 were approved and 7 were denied because of a variety of non-disclosure issues. The 24 approvals given so far this year, however, have only been preliminary pre-qualifications for marijuana businesses. No licenses have been awarded yet by the state. Let me repeat that because I've had some people kind of butting in, telling me about licenses and that people have told them that they're licensed. They just simply haven't been licensed. No one's gotten licensed yet. No licenses have been doled out. June is here, and this is when they started talking about we're going to be like actually licensed facilities are going to start opening. And there's a June 15th deadline that whether or not unless you have the final license from the state, you have to close your existing business. So all around bad news for medical marijuana in Michigan. And yeah, this shit's bad right here. I don't know how they plan on making $700 million in sales a year, but they're counting on that tax revenue, and they're counting on these application fees, and they're counting the money every day. So, yeah, whatever. So the bottom line here is, guys, Lansing is full of a bunch of corrupt people, and Republicans are definitely your enemy when it comes to legalizing marijuana. The legislature should never be allowed to touch any marijuana policy because they are clearly guided by special interests every time, whether it's special interests that just want them to basically throw a wrench in this shit. You know, you've seen that many times, like in Maryland, and there's so many other states where they delayed this and they delayed that, and they just delayed some licenses in Ohio. They delayed licenses in Massachusetts. They did. What's the purpose of all this? It's to slow it down. It's to make it so the competition from big pharma or alcohol or whoever else is lobbying these politicians, or the prison industrial lobbyists is getting their asses in cells, or whatever it is. Like, the old way is really not wanting to die out. And part of that is the police forfeiture situation where, they basically want to take your shit. It's over $1 billion a year industry for local police. And who knows how much in Michigan, because there's no audits of that shit. And who knows what they're even doing with it. But they don't want to give it up. I know that. Anyway, it's painful to see this happen, but what is my opinion? I don't think they're going to do it. I mean, will they even take a vote up on it? Why not? Sure. Will it pass in the Senate? I don't have any reason to doubt Meekoff when he says it's going to pass in the Senate. But it ain't going to pass in the House. There's just no way. So I guess this is the last time I'm going to do a story about this unless it passes. So that's it, guys. Catch you next time.